Hi everyone, how are you doing? It's we're on to story number 4 from Tales from a Scarygirl, volume 1. Those of you who've been listening to these stories I've been reading will be aware of it. Some of you may already have read them, but I just thought in this time when we're all a bit, not able to move around as freely as we're used to, I just thought I'd come and hopefully give you a little bit of light relief, a little bit of entertainment to brighten, or should I say darken your days, in a good way, obviously. So now the next story I want to read to you was inspired by something. One evening while I was driving home from seeing my some family members in Cumbria, down the M6, you get all the bridges that go across the motorway. Well, there was strangely just birds, crows, ravens, whichever. I don't really know the intricacies of them. Obviously I was driving, so I couldn't pay that much attention. They were just lined up all along the railings on the bridge, and as I drove under it I just shuddered because I just thought it was like a portent of doom. And as I was then driving home, a 2-hour journey, the story of Raven Bridge came into my mind. So here it is for you. Sit back and relax and enjoy. Raven Bridge is its official name, its birth name if you will, but the residents of Copper Falls have an altogether different name for it. Over the years, Raven Bridge has been the location of so many fatal accidents that the locals nicknamed it Death Bridge. The history of its given name dates back several centuries to when Copper Falls Wood was a lot bigger than it is today. The wood was inhabited by many species of trees, but its most predominant occupant was the copper beech. Copper Falls Wood was home to the largest colony of copper beech trees in the country. It was these trees and the spectacular waterfall at the heart of the wood that gave the town its name. Copper Falls Wood was also home to the largest congress of ravens found anywhere in the world, and they chose, for some unknown reason, to roost in the copper beech trees. Local history has it that the noise created by these huge birds was enough to wake the dead. In the mid-1970s, before trees and animals were seriously considered protected, the town council voted by a very slim majority to build a major road through the wood. It would connect Copper Falls to the nearest city, which was 20 miles away. Over the years, the road became so busy that the residents worried it would only be a matter of time before someone was killed. After much debate, the town council voted, again by a slim majority, to build a bridge and linking roads to take pedestrians and local traffic, leaving the main road to the bulkier traffic. The only place that could accommodate such an enterprise was the wood. Despite the many protests and demonstrations, it was decided that the lives of the human occupants of Copper Falls were worth more than those of its wilder inhabitants. The construction crews moved in, and by the time the bridge and link roads were completed, the ravens had moved out, every last one of them. Once the construction crews had left, an eerie silence befell Copper Falls. My grandmother described it as being in the eye of the storm, as though the town was waiting for something. It was. It was waiting for the ravens to come back and occupy the remaining copper beech trees, but they never did. In memory of their absent avian companions, the town named the bridge Raven Bridge. It was 20 years later before the raven was seen again in Copper Falls. At dawn, on the 21st of February 1994, Peter Johns, the milkman, was doing his rounds. He couldn't shake the sense that he was being watched, and when he got back to the dairy, a sixth sense made him look towards Raven Bridge. Lining the full length of the stone wall was an unkindness of ravens, silent ravens, still ravens, every set of eyes staring straight at him. As though the breath was being sucked out of him, Peter's chest began to constrict and he gasped and fought for air. Within minutes, he sank to his knees, clutching at his chest, before he slumped onto the pavement, dead. The ravens, as one, launched themselves into the air, their raucous cries rousing the town with memories. I saw it all. It didn't disturb me or frighten me. I just accepted it. I had been warned. What goes around comes around, my grandmother had always said. It started, Grandma, I muttered to myself as I climbed back into bed to await my alarm call. Of course, no one saw what I saw that day, nor did anyone else see it the next time it happened, a few months later. I was walking home from university, alone as usual, and was just coming out onto the high street when I stopped and looked up at the bridge. Just as before, the ravens were perched, wing to wing, staring fixedly at something ahead. I turned to look and saw the university bus, the one I should have been on but had missed, hurtling down the road. It was travelling way too fast. I stood and watched, transfixed, as the driver fought to control the bus as it careered from one side of the road to the other, but he couldn't. The bus smashed headlong into the bridge and burst into flames. I looked up to see the ravens launch themselves from the bridge, their cawing drowning out the screams of the townspeople as they rushed to the scene. 30 of the students from my university died on that bus, most of them my classmates. The driver survived. He wasn't from Copper Falls. This became an all too familiar occurrence over the next decade. Every few months someone died or was killed close to Raven Bridge, someone from the town. Every time it happened, the ravens were there. I saw them. No one connected the events. No one but me. It started with things my grandmother had said before she died, and the rest I gleaned from the local history section of the library. History had it that the ravens carried an almost mythical element to them. They'd always acted as guardians of Copper Falls. Centuries ago, few people had travelled beyond the village in which they'd lived, and so, when someone had approached, the ravens had launched themselves into the sky, their cacophony of calls alerting the villagers to the new arrival. This alarm system had served the village well and had prevented, on many occasions, bandits and other rogues from taking the village by surprise. As time marched on, of course, the need for such warnings had diminished, but it hadn't stopped the residents of Copper Falls from adopting the raven as their protector and mascot. Over the years, the ravens had marked the start of certain events, with a deafening ruckus and a darkening of the skies as they'd taken flight. Local history had noted these times and the events that had happened the day after, the start of both world wars, for example. They'd also heralded when something bad was to befall Copper Falls itself, like the kidnap and murder of little Janie Stevens or the hostage situation at the bank, which had left 5 people dead. All these events had been before the building of Raven Bridge, before the ravens had disappeared from the town. My grandmother had often warned me that someday we would be sorry for forcing them to leave, but I had just nodded, too young to really understand. The last documented raven uproar had happened the day before completion of Raven Bridge. The aesthetics of the village had changed dramatically, and my grandmother, apparently, had complained about it constantly. She had been the last remaining protester as my grandfather had towered over her in his bulldozer. He had never forgiven her. This particular day, the sun had been beating down and the sky had been the deep, clear blue of summer. The constant drone of the bulldozers had been all too familiar sound in Copper Falls, so much so that when the ravens had kicked off, everyone had stopped to stare, even the contractors. The whole town had put it down to the birds protesting at the destruction of their habitat. Even the Historical Society hadn't noted the disturbance at first, not until the following day, when the town had awoken to an uneasy silence, to an absence of ravens. Around lunchtime, my grandfather had been discovered crushed under his bulldozer. To this day, no one knows how it had happened. My grandmother, stoic to the end, had never shed a tear for him. "He deserved it, Jake," she said to me one day. "He should never have led the destruction of that wood. If he hadn't, they'd still be here and he'd still be alive." I hadn't known what to say, quiet child that I was, so I said nothing. "Mark my words, Jake," she continued. "Those ravens will be back, and it won't be a warning they'll bring with them." My grandmother had passed away in her sleep that night, leaving me alone and at the mercy of the authorities. She'd been right as well. The ravens did come back. 20 men had worked on the building of that bridge, and every last one of them was dead within a year, all killed within the vicinity of Raven Bridge, all in freak accidents, all watched over by the ravens and by me. It was after this horrific year that the locals renamed it Death Bridge. One by one they were picked off. No one saw the pattern except me. No one really connected the two, or didn't want to. My own theories, especially the ones which said they hadn't finished, were beaten into silence, but I'd been right. Eventually, I'd been right. It took 20 years, though. 2 decades after the deaths of the men involved in the building of Raven Bridge, their descendants started to be picked off, one by one, Peter Johns being the first. Slowly, methodically, calculatingly. Their raucous cry afterwards reminded me of laughter, harsh, unfeeling laughter. Laughter that punctuated the lesson they were teaching. It's funny, really. After all the deaths I'd witnessed over the years, I couldn't imagine what it would feel like when my turn came. Strangely, I don't feel anything. As I stare up at the beady black eyes of the ravens lined up along Raven Bridge, I feel calm, almost accepting of my fate. a fate bestowed on me by my grandfather. I hear the screech of brakes, and I hear the voices screaming at me to get out of the road. I turn around to face my fate and smile to see the construction vehicle bearing down. The irony is not lost on me. I close my eyes and raise my face to the heavens. The last thing I hear is the harsh laughter of the ravens as they leave Raven Bridge for the last time, their numbers swelled by one, their unkindness complete. I do hope you enjoyed that little tale of Raven Bridge, and I'll be back again soon with some more stories from Tales from a Scary Girl. So until then, please look after yourselves and stay safe. See you soon. Bye.